House Corrections and Senate Judiciary on House Bill 2329. And so I'd ask the revisor to brief us on the bill and the amendments.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chair. The HB 2329 is the bill about various juvenile offender issues. As it left the House, Section 1 is an amendment to KSA 38-2361 about the court placing juveniles in the custody of the Secretary of Corrections and ordering the Secretary to place them in a youth residential facility in certain circumstances. That provision also has a piece about if a firearm was possessed or used during the commission of a felony offense, the judge may commit the juvenile directly to the custody of the Secretary for placement in a juvenile correctional facility or a youth residential facility for a minimum term of 12 months, which is up from 6 in current law, and up to a maximum term of 24 months, which is up from 18 in current law, regardless of the risk level of the juvenile. So there's a few changes from current law in there that are underlined or highlighted accordingly. Section 2 is then amended to be compatible with another section, with the section I just talked about ordering the Secretary to place a juvenile in a certain setting, in this case, a youth residential facility. Section 3 is an amendment to KSA 38-2369, which is essentially the juvenile kind of placement matrix or sentencing grid, for lack of a better term. And the change there is to allow chronic offenders, which is a specific category of offenders, to be committed as a juvenile to a juvenile correctional facility if they are assessed as moderate risk, and currently that's only for high-risk juvenile offenders. Section 4 amends the cumulative detention limit from 45 days to 90 days over the course of the juvenile offender's case. I do note that it maintains the current exception that there's no limit for certain high-level offenses, so this is the limit for everyone else. And then Section 5 is an amendment about the Secretary of Corrections contracting for use of not less than 35 nor more than 45 non-foster home beds in youth residential facilities, with not more than 15 of those beds being in any single facility. Section 6 requires the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee to monitor the impact and effectiveness of placements in these non-foster home beds in youth residential facilities. Section 7 has an expenditure from the evidence-based programs account in an amount not to exceed $10 million in any fiscal year to contract for those non-foster home beds for placement of juvenile offenders. And Section 8 has the override function that you're familiar with. So when a juvenile is alleged to have possessed or used a firearm during the commission of offense, the juvenile intake and assessment worker or the court is required to place that juvenile in a juvenile detention facility. And then the amendments made by the Senate, you can take over, I can keep going.
Can you pause just a moment? We're voting on the floor, so we're gonna, please stand at ease. Thanks. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending the Senate and House Judiciary Committee Conference Committee on all bills in conference. And we will need a kind of a summary procedurally where we are from the reviser. This committee had met earlier today and had agreed to a conference committee report concerning House Bill 2164. And we need some clarification from the reviser on where we are on that. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because House Bill 2164, the conference committee report, had been half run, it had been run in the Senate but not in the House, the interpretation of the rule is that we can't use that until the House would not adopt the conference committee report and send it back to conference. So it would be fastest for you to identify a different shell to put that agreement into.
Thank you. Could you identify if we have a House shell that could be a vehicle for this?
So, Madam Chair, we wouldn't say that you have any shells right now because you really haven't conferenced together, but you do have two bills that go together quite well, which would be the theft of livestock and then the theft of grain and hay. So you could use House Bill 2422 as a shell and just plan on combining those as you conference later.
You know, that's what I had thought as well, that those would be two good options to combine and give us a shell. So if you could just briefly brief us on what those two bills do.
All right. So, Madam Chair, House Bill 2422 is providing theft of grain as a severity level 6 non-person felony. And then the Senate added hay that is at least 20,000 pounds of alfalfa or other content. So that's 2422. And 2413 is theft of livestock or implements of husbandry, and that becomes a severity level 5 non-person felony. And the only difference is the Senate made that effective on publication in the Register. So they both actually meant the crime of theft in addition to some other things. So that's why the combination seemed logical.
So it would make sense to have an offer from the House, right? Because those bills were last amended by the Senate. So if the House has an offer to make.
Yeah, we would like to offer to put both of those bills into House Bill 2422. One is already in there, but take the other one and put into House Bill 2422. And I believe that one is the one that is effective. Nope, it's the other way around.
I want you to
Put 2422 into.
I think you plan to use 2422 as your shell for your app store. Is that okay? Yeah. So for the combine, you'll put the theft of whichever one into 2413.
Okay. 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 Thank you for that clarification. So we would like to put both of those into House Bill 2413. And just to confirm, that then is effective on the date of the statute book, not the registry, right? 2413.
So, Madam Chair, 2413 as it came over was register, but as part of your agreement, you could make it statute book.
Okay, I
You could do
think,
that in the CCR.
okay, let's do that in the statute book. So both of those bills would end up in 2413, theft of grain and theft of livestock. And then I'll just go ahead and finish the whole offer and say everything that we had done so far with Senate Bill 84/House Bill 2164. We would put that all into 2422.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on our side? No, we don't have any questions on our side. So that's putting what was originally 372 into 84. That went into the 2164. That's now going into 2422. And that was 372 as it came out of the House committee.
With
And with amendments as amended in our CCR in 2164. Make sure those get in there too. Okay, yes. Yes, the Senate accepts the offer.
And I think a member has a question.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, if I understand it, the grain has been changed to hay, or can I get clarification just as we're going to be accepting grain or hay, or both?
It's both.
Okay. Second thing, a question for the revisor. We, on the previous committee, when we last met, we made a motion, it was accepted. That motion apparently is invalid. What happens with regards to that motion? What happens with regards to the bill? Given that it was accepted and we adjourned.
Madam Chair, so the motion that you made in conference, we don't need to worry about that because you've clarified here that your new agreement is to put it in 2422. With respect to 2164, if you want to use that as a shell for something else, the House is going to have to not adopt the conference committee report and send it back to conference. Or, they could perhaps adopt the conference committee report. We wouldn't recommend that because it's a carryover bill, so we need to make some technical changes. So if you do want to use it for other purposes, we would recommend that you not adopt it and send it back.
Okay, thank you.
I think that concludes our business for now, and we'll need to get together at another time because we've got other bills in conference to address.
I'm wondering if you know your early tomorrow morning, if people know their schedule, maybe we could begin to hammer out some things first thing in the morning. Do you know what you're doing?
Let me check. Hold on just a moment. We're not certain yet. We could try for something like 8:30. Want to try 8 o'clock? 8 o'clock? Okay, we'll need to secure a room, but we'll try for that, so.
Okay, that would be great, just to have something on the calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that then, this meeting is adjourned.
After recess, we're back, conference committee between Senate Judiciary and House Corrections. We're continuing our work on House Bill 2329. The reviser was in the process of briefing us on that, and I'll ask him to finish his work.
Okay, so I think Jason finished talking about how it left the House. Is that accurate? Okay. So the Senate made a few changes. The changes to the placement in the youth residential facility are limited to happening between July 1st of 2026 and July 1st of 2030. So those changes would sunset in the Senate version. There were no changes made to Section 2. Section 3 in the chronic offender category, they added a provision that juvenile offender who is adjudicated for an offense committed while that offender was awaiting adjudication for a prior felony or on probation or conditional release for a prior felony adjudication, those offenders would be considered chronic offenders for purposes of placement in the juvenile correctional facility. No changes to Section 4. On Section 5, this is related to the contracting for the beds in the youth residential facilities. So that sunset where that contract limitation, it would just be between July 1st of 2026 and July 1st of 2030. And then on and after July 1st of 2030, it would go back to what the current law says, which is that the secretary may contract for use of not more than 50 non-foster home beds in youth residential facilities. And then Section 6 was added, KSA 65-536. This was Senate Bill 414 that was heard in Senate Judiciary related to juvenile crisis intervention centers. So the section was modified to allow that funding authority. Current law allows the Secretary of Corrections to enter into an MOU with other cabinet secretaries to spend not more than $2 million annually on juvenile crisis intervention centers. And this would allow that funding to be used for residential facilities that are licensed by DCF or KDADS that have the program purpose of a behavioral health crisis intervention, even if they're not necessarily licensed as a juvenile crisis intervention center. And I can take any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. So you, the Senate, returned our bill with some changes, and for the most part, we are accepting of those and think they were good. We have an offer to make. And I think the easiest way to explain the offer is for you to look at, I had Jason's give you two documents. One at the top says proposed amendments to House Bill number 2329. And then another one says proposed amendments, but says cleanup amendments. The cleanup amendments will take second. Those are suggested by the reviser. Okay, I believe it's page 15 is our first proposed change as part of our offer. And this has to do with the definition of a chronic offender. And the Senate had added little I4, which included somebody that committed while such offender was awaiting adjudication for a prior felony offense or on probation or conditional release for a prior felony adjudication. And we believe we would propose striking awaiting adjudication for a prior felony offense for the reason that we're defining an offender, and if he or she hasn't been adjudicated, we didn't think it right to consider that in determining whether this person is a chronic offender. So we propose striking the language there awaiting adjudication for a prior felony offense. The next change that we're proposing is, so this has to do with section, starting on page 16, section 4, which runs through, up to section 5 on page 19. This is, was added by the Senate. It concerns crisis center, intervention centers. Yeah, that's because they're just giving you the changes, but yeah. You'd have to, yeah, you don't have the entire bill. We can get that for you. But in any event, our proposal is to insert in place of what's now section, did I say 4? Section 4, the contents of House Bill 2639, which is a bill that comes out of the Child Welfare Committee and has to do with something that we're now calling this a stabilization. And it also ran through the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's the next change. And then on page 27, the original bill had said that $10 million could be taken from the evidence-based program fund and used for these residential youth facilities. And once we looked at the actual cost of housing a juvenile for 365 days and looked at the numbers that we were looking at, we realized that we didn't need 10 million, that $4.5 million would be good, and obviously that's a savings, fiscal savings, which we like. And then the last change is on the second, starts on the second to last page. It has to do with when the court shall approve an override function of the detention risk assessment tool. And the Senate had added on little I2, which read, if the youth has been presented to a juvenile intake and assessment system for the second time within 1 year. That was the amendment that the Senate made, and we want to amend that again, and let me explain the rationale for it. It's twofold. One, the Senate amendment would have caught not just juvenile offenders, but SINK kids, because SINK kids can sometimes be subject to risk assessments. And so we wanted to ensure that we weren't including SINK kids in this override function. And also, we thought that the 1 year was too long. We wanted to shorten that so that when they repeated within a shorter period than 1 year. So the amendment that we're proposing is not exactly as you see it typed here. It's somewhat different. And I'll show you that the difference is instead of 60 days, we're offering 30 days. And then on the balloon there, which is designed to ensure that we're only catching offenders and not SINK kids, it now reads pursuant to the revised Kansas Juvenile Justice Code. And the concern with leaving it as is that we could pick up kids that are committing infractions like smoking or something along those lines. So the amendment we're proposing would be pursuant to the revised Kansas Juvenile Code for an offense which, if committed by an adult, would constitute a misdemeanor or a felony. So it would be a misdemeanor or a felony offense. So we would narrow somewhat the kids that would be subject to the override. Are there any questions about our offer?
Thank you very much. So, starting with the last thing you said, the additional language for an offense which, if committed by an adult, would be a misdemeanor or a felony? Why is that necessary if you've already got it pursuant to the revised Kansas Juvenile Justice Code? Because you're not going to catch sink kids if you've put in pursuant to the revised Kansas Juvenile Justice Code. Are there other offenses that
Right.
are in the Juvenile Justice Code that wouldn't be a misdemeanor or a felony, and that's why you want that clarifying language? Okay.
I think they would be called an infraction. They would be something below a misdemeanor.
So you want to raise it up a little bit
Right.
than the
I
lowest?
believe, let me check with the revisor if I'm accurate about that. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so to raise it to the level of a misdemeanor or felony type activity or conduct, so. Okay, well, let us confer on the offer, if that's okay. Thank you.
We'll leave you guys. You want to leave or? Okay.
So thank you. A couple of procedural questions. The definition that the House includes in its offer to 2329, I'm sorry, where? Yes.
That's on page 15, I believe.
Page 15. Okay, so this may be a question for the revisor. Where did the definition that the offer is amending on page 15, where did that definition, that's something that the, let's see, the Senate Committee of the Whole put that in, right? Subsection 4.
Number 4 is what you included or added.
Okay, and I believe if I recall that that's the definition that came from the Office of Child Advocate, but you want to change it slightly.
Right, to delete.
Okay, I
someone
see.
who's awaiting adjudication.
Okay, and not okay as though we accept it, but we understand. The second question is, what's the purpose of combining 2639 into 2329 if the House isn't making any changes to 2639 as it came out of the Senate? Couldn't you just concur on 2639? Or am I missing
Right.
an amendment that you made to 2639 that you need?
No, it was mainly a revisor suggestion, and maybe I'll let the revisor explain
I
that.
recall now, there is a little bit of inconsistency between the two, and if we put them together, then it helps align what they're doing. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, with respect to that, the main conflict, if you look at, let me find it, if you have 2639 in front of you, it's on page 26, subsection H. In 2329, page 26, subsection H. And if you have 2329 in front of you, it's on page 28 in subsection F. Basically, or wait, sorry, that's not right. Oh, it's on page 22, subsection H. So, there's a provision in current law that allows the Secretary of Corrections to enter into an MOU with other cabinet agencies for $2 million every year for juvenile crisis intervention centers. In 2639, that provision is completely removed because they're doing the demand transfer of the $4 million. But in House Bill 2329, that is intact, and then you amended it to say, to add that the MOU can be for not just juvenile crisis intervention centers, but other licensed facilities that provide juvenile crisis services. So you just need to clarify which position you want to take on that subsection. It's in 636.
Which page of the bill again?
Are you looking at 2329?
No.
Which bill are you looking at?
So for clarity, in 2329, page 22, subsection H is where the potential conflict arises with 2639, page 26, subsection H. Okay, thank you. So the thought from the House in its offer is that combining 2639 into 2329, we could resolve the conflict.
That's right. Cindy? Yes.
So what will be the definition of crossover youth? Will it be as proposed by the House? If the Senate were to accept the House position, the House offer, it would be the definition on page 15 in 2329. Okay, so two different issues there. Crossover youth is defined in 2639, and
I think perhaps what you might be trying to do is offer what you guys did in 2639 with respect to the definition of crossover youth, which they wouldn't have seen that because it wasn't in their version.
we put that in there. Okay, so that's why you're trying to put 2639. Okay. And then, all right. Is that, do we have that right? As passed by the Senate, 2639 as passed by the Senate with that definition of crossover youth, and there's some other definitions in there too, I think. Okay. All right, thank you again for the standing at ease. So we understand that there's a definition of crossover youth in 2639. Is there also a definition, where is it in 2329? The Senate wants to make sure that if we put 2639 into 2329 as it came out of the Senate, that there's no conflict between the two bills in the definition of crossover youth.
Madam Chair, House Bill 2329 doesn't define crossover youth because it doesn't actually deal really with crossover youth specifically in their definitions.
Well, then there could be no conflict. So that's easily resolved. So the Senate appreciates the offer from the House. The Senate is not able to accept the offer, but would like to counter with placing the contents of 2639 as it came out of the Senate into House Bill 2329. And could consider the amendments proposed by the House to 2329, except, this is one whole package I'm talking about, except the change from 12 months. The last page, second to last page. It is the last page. So the Senate has a strong position of 12 months, and the House, as the bill came to us, didn't have this provision at all. So it seems a little bit one-sided to move from a year to 30 days, and so should be something the Senate feels closer to 12 months, so the Senate offer would be 9 months.
So as I understand it, the Senate's counteroffer is to accept the House's offer except for the 30 days. Is that right?
That would be one whole package, yes. We're not accepting any of it now, but we're countering wholly with that, yes.
Okay, why don't I talk to our folks? We'll be right back. Thank you for indulging us. Okay, on the difference between 30 days and 1 year, the reason that we are proposing something substantially less than 1 year is that we've spoken with law enforcement as well as the groups and the businesses that might be actually providing the care and treatment. And they told us that they thought that the year would essentially overwhelm the detention facilities, which would be housing these youth where there's the override. And so that's why we are proposing the 30 days. We'll counter with 60 days. We think that that's more in line with the capacity of the detention facilities, and also we think that reflects, if there's a repeat within 60 days, we think that gets close to targeting the population of children that we're looking at.
Thank you, appreciate the offer, and we'll go confer for a moment. Thank you.
I just wanted to emphasize that, the House also voted strongly in favor of it, 106 to 16, and we did not have this provision at all in what we passed. And furthermore, that, the issue of the number of the time span within which we are saying a juvenile needs to be a repeat offender, and the request that it be much less than a year comes not from the House so much as from stakeholders that are involved on the ground every day, trying to work with these youth. And so we're not able to accept the half year or 6 months, but we are willing to go to 3 months. And once again, I think that really reflects not so much a House position as stakeholder position.
Well, we're going to have to consider that. I mean, these are kids who, right, they're being picked up a second time for, not for sink instances, not for child in need of care, but for an offense which, if committed by an adult, which the House proposes to put onto the bill, would be a misdemeanor or a felony. I mean, these are some kids that need some intervention, and before they go down a road, this is for the second time within this time frame, before they go down a road that's going to just escalate. So this is an important provision that I don't recall where this suggestion came from, but from a stakeholder, that if you're picked up within a second time, that then the court could override the function of the detention risk assessment tool, because we need to make sure we get these kids the help that they need, the resources that they need, so they don't continue down this road of involvement with the juvenile justice code. So the Senate will consider that, and we will take a break. It's disappointing we're not at 6 months, the Senate having moved to the middle position, but let us consider that for a minute.
Thank you.
I apologize. This is my first committee of this sort, so I've had a headache with this bill from the very beginning, as you know. I voted for it the first time, hoping it would get better, but I think you very succinctly stated what the problems with it are. I, too, am worried that we're getting into a mode where we want to go against Senate Bill 367. And I think that's the wrong development. I think I like some of the things that we've done here today, no question about it. But I still think the time lengths are a problem, and I feel like there's a push to more incarceration, and I feel very strongly that we need to not build more prisons, but need to figure out how to engage more community services and not go down a more punitive route. So I think I will not sign on to it for that reason. I apologize for backing out on this, but those are exactly some of the concerns that I've had as well, and so I will join the senator in that. Thank you.
Thank you. I seem to be the anomaly on this committee. I represent child welfare, and the Senate does not have that committee, and so you guys haven't been able to dig in as deeply as we have on the House side. And what I found out, I've spent hours this summer perusing this bill, having conversations with all different stakeholders in this, and what I've learned is that Senate Bill 367 is very effective for 90% of the kids. But what this bill addresses is the 10% that are wreaking havoc on our child welfare system. And we have to do something to protect these victims that are being assaulted by offenders. It has to stop. And I don't think that these kids are bad kids. I don't want to lock them up, but they have got to be held accountable for their actions. And that's very, very important. And so I think what we have done in this 2329, the part I've been involved with is just the youth residential facilities and the stabilization centers, is create options and alternatives for these kids to get the help that they need outside of foster care, which is really, really important that we do. And so I would hope that you would support this, and I understand if you can't, but this is crucial. And we're not talking about every juvenile kid. We're talking about those 10% of kids that aren't de-escalating when they're getting caught the first time. And so with that, I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I concur with my vice chair, I guess, for this purpose. And I'll say just this. 367, Senate Bill 367 did a lot of good things. We were incarcerating way too many kids. And what happened is there was consensus that we should bring them out of the prison facilities. And this wasn't the worst of the worst. This would be the repeat offenders, the car thieves, and so forth. And the problem was that the Senate Bill 367 solution was to send them back to their communities. Sounds nice. They're going to be provided community services and so forth. But the fact of the matter is they were sending them back to the same environment that they had offended in, to the same, in large part, maybe dysfunctional families. And then they were also sending them into their schools, and they were disrupting the schools. And I've talked with my own school in Garden City, and they now have a special area, a special off-campus area that they have to educate the kids in. And then the foster care system, as Representative Howerton told you, is being corrupted by these children, these youth. It's not good for the system. It's not good for them. They're not being helped. And once again, it is a relatively small group of kids. And so as to the youth residential facilities, I mean, it's an alternative to incarceration that I think is necessary. And it's not going back on 367. It's not sending them back in most instances to the prison. And I think this is a very good bill that we've worked on for now 2 years. I am very disappointed that my ranking is now not supportive of it. Okay, well, fair enough, fair enough. And we have good relationship, and I'm disappointed. And so I'm very very encouraged that we're going to get this bill passed, and I'm very hopeful, optimistic even, that it's going to improve the juvenile justice system in Kansas.
The one piece that I think I've struggled with the most is that, you know, when I've asked a question, if we extend these case length limits, are we guaranteeing that these kids are going to get the services that they need? And the answer is always no. And so we're just going to be keeping these kids longer, traumatizing them further, separating them from their community supports, from their school, from their job, from everything that provides them stability. And we're not even guaranteeing them that they'll get the services that they need. It'd be one thing if we could guarantee that they would get the services that they need, and the only thing stopping them from getting the services is that we weren't able to get the services provided in 45 days, so we had to do it for 90 days. But now we're going to do 90 days with no guarantee of services and continue to traumatize these kids and separate them from the real only things that are stable in their lives: employment, school, friends, family. So that to me has been the one piece that I've always found most frustrating. If somebody could guarantee that the services would be provided, I think I would feel differently, but I've repeatedly been told that they're not guaranteed to get services, especially in the residential homes. I think the residential homes are least likely to provide the services that these kids need in a timely manner. So.
All right, so I'm the chair, I believe, of this portion of our conference. I believe we'll be adjourned.